The art of poetry lies in its ability to use words, which are often thought to be a limited means of communication, and transcend their immediate meaning. Poems take on emotion and movement and have an uncanny way of setting off a domino chain of thoughts. They can simplify the most complex of ideas and give complexity to those ideas that seem simple. It would make sense then that poetry has been a means of expression for concepts hidden in the mind-boggling world of religion and belief. Matsu Basho was one man who utilized this art when exploring his growing Buddhist beliefs. But how did he find this path? How did he find Buddhism? Basho's poems are best understood when there is first an understanding of his past. Beginning by looking at his childhood and the first steps into Buddhism, to the many pilgrimages he made, to the poems themselves, Basho's work can be seen as a progression of beliefs and a reflection of his experiences. In 1644, in the Aiga province near Kyoto, Japan, Basho was born. The name he was given at birth was actually Matsu Munefusa, which he later changed. His father was a samurai, and his family held an honorable yet not highly respected name. During his younger years, Basho worked as a page to one of the province's ruling masters, Todo Yoshitada. Yoshitada spent much of his time learning verses, and the two soon bonded over their love for poetry. As they grew older, they came to be close friends. They would often explore and recite verses together and continue to expand their love for the art. His life continued steadily and seemed to be leading him into his father's footsteps as a fair-ranking samurai, when a sudden tragedy changed the rest of his life. At the age of 22, his master Yoshitada died, leaving Basho devastated. The death brought more heartache for him, as his brother was then assigned to Yoshitada's widow, with whom Basho had fallen in love. This launched Basho into a need for release and understanding, and so he left to Mount Koya, where there was a Buddhist monastery, to meditate over his loss. Through meditation, Basho had an epiphany that his life was not meant to be that of a samurai. He was instead meant to be a poet. He used the 5 years he spent with Yoshitada's teacher, where Basho had been taught calligraphy and classic Chinese literature and verses alongside his master, and decided to further his education of the Zen Buddhism he had experienced at the monastery. Basho had heard of a Buddhist priest named Bucho and quickly sought his guidance. After some hesitation, Bucho took Basho on as his student. Basho spent much of his time with Bucho, mostly in Zen Buddhist meditation. He admired Bucho's ability to see how everything was connected and his aura of peace. It's speculated that Basho saw the Buddhist path as a way to escape the tragedy he had recently faced. It was during this time that Basho made his first change in name. As he grew fonder and fonder of haiku, his admiration of other talented poets became stronger as well. To show his respect for the poet he thought most highly of, he changed his name from Matsu Munefusa to Matsu Tosai. Tosai means green peach, and the name of the poet he was honoring was Laipai, or white plum. Basho later showed his love for Laipai's work by mimicking one of his travels. Although Basho chose this name, it is clearly not the name that stuck with him. The name Matsu Basho actually was given to him as a nickname from his students when he became a teacher himself. Basho was given a Japanese banana tree as a gift and adored it so much that he would spend most of his writing and meditation time sitting under his banana tree. Basho admired the leaves of the tree because of their size and how they were. Frayed by the wind, they made him think of the tale of the mythical phoenix, or of a green fan torn to shreds in a gale. Basho means banana, and since the students always saw him under the tree, they began to call this spot the Banana Tree Cottage, which soon evolved into his new name and lasting name, Matsu Basho. Although Basho became a teacher as well as he was ordained a Zen Buddhist priest, he often described himself as a non-priest. He liked to think that he was part of the unbroken cloth of life. Basho at times would refer to himself as a priest in order to portray his discipline and loyalty to the Zen Buddhist path. He would teach in order to help enlighten others, and through them continue to find enlightenment for himself. But Basho did not want to be separated from the universe by a label, nor did he consider himself an ordinary man. He wore the title in a way that described him as both priest and non-priest. Although this posed a sometimes contradictory self-representation, Basho made meditation and conceptualization his focus, and let the title be as it was, controversial. As a Zen Buddhist, Basho believed strongly in meditation. Zen Buddhism contains the concept of kenshos. Kenshos are a sort of mini-awakening. There's a true enlightenment, and there are moments of understanding and epiphany. The moments are kenshos. Basho would use daily meditation to achieve kensho, and this is often what he would record in his poem. The format for haiku existed before Basho, but it was his intense incorporation of these kensho moments which brought the formula of nature plus man equals a vision of our common thread that made these poems a staple in the Buddhist religion. Basho used this formula throughout most of his poems, even though he did indulge in creating many prose works as well. His inspiration came from the nature that surrounded him. He would meditate on a flower until it reached a thought that led to a feeling that led to an understanding, and eventually a connection between man and nature, and in turn the universe. Then he would take the simplicity of the flower that initiated that moment and put it into a haiku. And within the simplicity of his writing, he embeds endless opportunity for interpretation for the next time they are read. One of the most famous examples is about a frog. Listen, a frog, jumping into the stillness of an ancient pond. Being that the life of his poems came from nature, Basho always admired those poets who chose to travel. He wanted to see the world outside of where he had been limiting himself to. He wanted to become a wandering poet like Lai Pai or Tu Fu. Those men were able to further their spiritual growth by encountering a much more diverse set of nature and culture. And so he did. Basho began his first pilgrimage to Ise, Japan. He passed through his childhood hometown along the way, which brought inspiration for poems of remembrance. He successfully finished this journey and produced the famous poem, The Journey of a Weather-Beaten Skeleton. The title, as well as the poem, was meant to show that he was willing to face the odds of death in order to be a part of this pilgrimage, that he was willing to wither away in order to save this opportunity for enlightenment. Basho was so pleased with his first journey that he planned his second one to land him in Kashima, where he intended to watch the moon harvest. This is also known as his Tone River journey and resulted in the journal Kashima Kiko. The weather was poor and did not permit him to see the harvest that he had hoped for, but the journey was not lost since he was able to stop and visit his old Zen Buddhist teacher, Bucho. When Basho took his third pilgrimage, he chose to travel to Mount Yoshino. This location is famous for its beautiful cherry trees, and he thought it would be perfect for a spring travel. Along the way, Basho again passed through Kyoto and brought Bucho Sung along with him to the cherry trees. This journey brought one more of his famous poems called The Cherry Trees. Ah, what memories! Myriad the thoughts evoked by those cherry trees. Basho made a journey to Mount Koya, which resulted in the journal Notes from a Pilgrim's Pack, but his most famous journey was the Michi-no-ku journey. He traveled for 5 months following the same paths as the poets he had so admired before him. He faced more danger in this one journey alone than he had in all his others combined. It was a grueling path that presented intense physical challenges. Basho was also confronted with the added difficulty of illness. This was that he had hoped for, since Basho's motivation behind his travels was to be met with threats to his life. He believed to become stronger, he needed to feel weakness, and in order to find understanding of life, he needed to have his in danger. Needless to say, this journey produced one of Basho's greatest pieces of writing entitled The Narrow Road to the Far North. The intensity of this journey encouraged Basho's decision to take a small break from traveling until his final journey to the southwestern Japan. He died there at the age of 50 in Osaka. The works of Basho are still used to this day for Buddhist teaching. They are cited profusely by Buddhist researchers and are the inspiration for many haiku writers. His poems may also have been inscribed in many temples or even non-Buddhist Asian buildings. In terms of religion, Basho's haikus are used in the manner that Christians use psalms. They are recited or sang and are a source of Zen Buddhist worship or focus for meditation. His poems are constantly under analysis by both the Buddhist community as well as the literary community. One of his first poems, which was mentioned to have a frog as the main subject, is an example of Basho's use of Buddhist symbolism. Listen, a frog, jumping into the stillness of an ancient pond. The frog is a symbol of respect in Buddhism. Their posture, bent down with their feet on the mat in front of them, is considered to be a bow before the universal God or the God of life. In this poem, Basho is often seen as using the pond to represent the universal spirit, the common cloth of all the world's constituent parts. The clincher, then, is that the frog, being of respectable symbolic power, is immersing itself into the universal spirit and is therefore experiencing actualization metaphorically. An alternate message is derived from this poem: the octopus is in the jar, transient dreams under the summer moon. Basho tells us indirectly that human life is unreal with nothing permanent in it. This interpretation given by Blythe is derived from the seeming existence of the octopuses, but as Basho states, they are merely in the jars. This intentionally parallels with the seeming existence of self, when really the human